Hello, my friends. I am your host, Daniel Wilcox, and you're listening to episode number 27 of the Writer's Chair podcast. And it is Wednesday, 8th of July, 2026. As I record this, we are flying through the podcast numbers. Number 27 already. Feels like yesterday I started the show again. In today's show, I'm going to be talking to award-winning British horror author Axel Moulton about his new book, Salem's Lake, tactics for querying agents, building a strong author brand, and stealing your mind against rejection, and so much more. So be sure to stick around for all of that. But before we get into all of that, here's my personal update. I am very, very, very excited to finally announce that my course is now absolutely live and done. Now, for context for people, this is a 7-day free course that you can download, you can jump on, you can just get involved in over at my website under the link danielwilcox.com/finish. And the idea of the course is it is 7 days, an email sent to you every morning with information, with a video, with a task and an exercise, which are my top tips that helps take me from struggling author to someone who has finished and published over 70 books, including, I think there's about 50 or 60 different novels in there, including my ghostwritten work. And honestly, it's been such a pleasant experience putting it all together, because I have had this idea in my head for close to 2 years now, and life gets in the way, things get busy, and I've never put a course together before properly. So there was a lot of wheels that needed to turn. There was a lot of learning I needed to do from my side to understand the best mechanisms, but I didn't have time. I've just kind of squeezed it in amongst everything else. But I got to a point where I was like, I want this done. I booked some time aside an afternoon, had everything written down, ready to go, recorded all the videos. As I say, it's 7 days worth of content, 7 videos. They're not super long. And the whole point is it's supposed to get you in the position in which you are mentally ready to go from struggling to finish a draft, terrified of even trying to write a draft, to being able to write the end. Now, it doesn't promise that within 7 days that you will finish the end and that you'll finish your draft. But what it does give you is 7 very, very particularly strong and powerful techniques that I adopt and have used for over 10 years in my own writing. They're very much similar lessons and a few of the same lessons that I use in my 50,000 word writers boot camps, boot, went a wee bit Scottish there, that I put in my boot camps I used to run, and that I'm looking at potentially running another one this year. So stick around for news on that. And yeah, they're just things that, fundamentally, it's distilling down the 7 biggest core principles to get you over that finish line. And I've already got people on the course. I've already got people rolling through the content, getting good feedback from people. And as I say, it's absolutely free. It's just something that I wanted to give back to a community that has given me so much. And honestly, it's conversations that I have often with authors whenever I'm coaching them, whenever I'm speaking to them in the writer's room, where they struggle. They hit that point of, they've either never finished a draft before or they're just struggling. And if you've never finished a draft before, as I say, they're very, very, very powerful lessons, and they will at least give you some rocket fuel to get into your engine to start helping you forward. And hopefully just to understand that getting stuck, imposter syndrome, all that kind of stuff is kind of par for the course with writing, and it's normal. And for people who have finished drafts before or are now in a bit of a slump, a bit of a dip where they're struggling to refine that energy that helps them finish what it is they're working on, it's reminders in there. And honestly, I took the course myself in setting it up just to kind of practice it, and it has reignited a big energy in myself, and I'm kind of smashing through a lot of projects that I have been stalling on. So if you like the sound of that, as I say, absolutely free, 7 days worth of content, something to your inbox every single morning. I will highly recommend that you do the exercises and don't just read the emails, because the exercises are practical things that really force you to sit down, and they only take between sort of 5 and 15 minutes. It's as long as you want to give to it. But they are practical things that help you really kind of absorb the lessons, and it just gives you that momentum, that moment to kind of recapture what it is you're looking for. So there we go. I've hyped the course, but it is free over at danielwilcox.com/finish. And I should say it's called Finish Your Damn Draft. So by the end of it, you should have the energy to finish your damn draft. So there you go. Go download that, check that out. The link will be in the show notes. In other news, I have been reading through the submissions for Hatching Season, which is very, very exciting. So this is my charity anthology. All proceeds raised will go to Mind. We have had over, I think it's 160 plus stories submitted, and I've got a very generous group of readers of about 15 of us who are working through the first sort of round of reading the submissions, just narrowing it down to the stories that will make it into the shortlisting. And I love this process. I kind of, excuse me, I kind of forgot how much I enjoyed it, because I like giving platforms to people, and I particularly like when people email me and tell me it's their first time submitting stories, because I mean, it's a fair bit of pressure to put on my shoulders, but at the same time, like, I like trying to make the first encounter with submissions a nice process. And I promised everyone from the start that they will get a response, whether or not they're successful or not. I'll obviously be kind. Can't give individual feedback to 160 stories because I'm a busy guy. But we're making our way through. And even in last night's writer's room, where I sit down with all the authors that are part of my writing group, and we work on stuff together, I have been reading through those stories, and it was just a nice experience to kind of sit down while some of the guys in the writer's room were working on their books, their Substacks, their whatever it is they've got going on. And I get to read some stories and that are going to be published later this year. I haven't confirmed a release date yet, but I mean, they're dark stories, so it's probably going to be around October time, and that's kind of what I'm aiming towards. So keep an eye out for that. And if you want to join me over in my writer's room, all the information is over at danielwilcox.com/the writer's room. And the final thing I'm chipping away on, I'm getting very, very close to finishing, is a novella that I've kind of been teasing, that's been in the works since 2022. And I'm doing all the accents today. Wow. It started off as a bit of a joke book that has evolved into something that I very much like, that is very, very dark. And yeah, I'm about 10 small chapters away from the finish. I have sorted out the cover for it. It's a very folk, rural farmyard type horror, with a bit of a pun on my name. So 10 points if you can guess what the book is called. And yeah, I'm just again enjoying that process of diving into fiction and reminding myself that while first drafts can sometimes be quite sticky and quite hard, edits can be very, very fun. So more news on that to come. I need to sit down and really start looking at launches and how I'm going to publish books, because nodding back to my conversation with Rob a couple of weeks ago, I'm looking at different ways to strategize book sales, because I want to prioritize the people that A, are already reading and are on my list, so that they can get sort of more reward for following me, and B, some really nice physical copies of books that I can sell at events and things. So yeah, there's a lot of wheels turning. But that's it from me for my intro. We are now going to go over into the interview with Axel Moulton, who, just for a bit of context, is someone who I met a few weeks ago at the Liverpool Book Con. As you'll notice, if you've listened to a few of the last few weeks' interviews, I met a lot of people at this con, and they've been very, very generous to come on the show and impart their wisdom. So this is yet another one from that cohort. So Axel is an award-winning author. I was drawn to his stand by his incredible book covers and his branding, which I then later realized were designed by the same person that had designed the cover for people watching on YouTube, the When Winter Comes cover, my big post-apocalyptic horror winter novel. So it was quite nice to have something in common. A guy called Covers by Christian did those, and he's just a tremendous cover designer. So yeah, we bonded over that. I loved what he was doing. He's got a new book out called Salem's Lake, which is lots and lots of fun. And as of the launch, as of the publication of this podcast episode, that book will only recently have gone live. So if you're listening to the show, do consider going over in the link in the bio, checking out the book, and potentially giving a little thumbs up to Axel. But I'm going to stop my jibber jabber, and I'm going to say now that if you're ready, then I'm ready. Why don't you pull up a chair, grab a notepad, and let's get into it. Axel, welcome to the show.
Hello.
A little bit of context about Axel. Axel is an award-winning UK-based author of dark fiction, crafting tales that explore the darker side of human nature. With a penchant for psychological tension and unsettling narratives, Moulton's writing has captivated readers worldwide. So I am as I say this to all the guests, but I'm genuinely also just very, very excited to have you on the show. We met, we were just saying, a couple of months ago in the same round of when I met Jasper and a few others at the Indie Horror chapter in Liverpool.
That's right, yeah.
So that was a lot of fun. That was how you came to my attention. And I'm very, very excited to dive into your new book, Calem's Lake. A lot of different stuff to do with that journey. But first, I do have a very, very important question for you, because I came across something in just doing a bit of research for you.
Okay.
So you once said that the never-ending spin cycle on your washing machine often formed the backdrop to your writing sessions.
Yeah.
So the first question is, are your clothes now clean?
Are they ever fully clean? It's a constant cycle, isn't it? Especially with kids running around, it's never off. My writing mainly, because I don't have an office, so mine takes place in the living room next to the kitchen. So it's like I have to deal with so many sounds and people walking through all the time, and so I always have a backdrop of all sorts going on.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that will probably sound like a nightmare to a lot of people who are listening right now. Like, I personally also work well being surrounded by noise. Like, I work in cafes and stuff a lot because it kind of helps me zone in. But talk us through, is that something you've always been able to do, sort of work in that chaos, or is that like a muscle you developed over time?
It's just something I've got used to. When I first started, because I first started writing properly in lockdown, and it was just really quiet. In the house, the kids were a lot little, so it was whenever they were like napping, or I just had some time for myself. But as I've developed as a writer, and I'm writing more often and constantly wanting to keep up with it, I find myself just being able to, anywhere when I've got a bit of time. So, like you say, cafes. I do some of my best writing in cafes when there's so much going on around me. But I can just focus and get to it.
Do you have any rituals or things that help you get into the zone when you are in that kind of chaotic frenzy? Like, I've got a few, like, I have to wear my headphones. I used to have sort of hand pain, so I used to have to wear like these sort of fingerless glove things. But there are a few sort of like just little things that I use. But do you have this? Do you have similar?
No, not really. I like to think that everything's sort of sorted. I like, if I'm writing at home, I can't write if there's like tons of mess around, So I like everything to just sort of be tidied up a bit, so I can sort of feel like there's nothing to do around me in eye line, and then I can just focus fully.
What would you say to people who also have kids that run around the house, don't have that sort of dedicated, isolated workspace, but are thinking of writing? Because, like, I do think I accidentally hit on this. I didn't expect to come to this part of the topic already, but the fact that you are making books happen at a fair old pace with this kind of setting, like, it's one thing that I hear a lot from authors that are starting out. It's just like, I don't have anywhere to write. I don't have the time. Like, I'm constantly interrupted. Like, what would you say to those people who have that story in their hearts but live in that kind of environment?
I would say just, obviously it can be a little bit irritating getting interrupted, but I would just don't let yourself get that irritated by it. Like, especially in that environment, people are always going to be coming in and out when you've got a family and the house is always full. Just relax. I just, that, because when I first started writing and got my first novel published, then I was like, oh, I have to, concentrate on this. Now I just have a bit more of a relaxed approach about it. And if I have to take a break for 10 minutes, it's still going to be there, and I can just come back to it. I didn't want to be one of those dads that's like, get out, I'm busy. And then, the whole childhood is, oh, my dad was like, don't come near me when I'm writing.
Yeah, that was that lockdown video, wasn't there, of that journalist who kind of just...
Yeah, exactly, yeah. Get out. Just relax and just, don't take it too seriously.
Yeah. Well, talk us through your writing journey, because you mentioned, obviously, you came into writing through lockdown. Was it something that you wanted to get started before then, or was it kind of, what was it about lockdown that made you sit down and go, okay, now's the time?
I think it was just time, because I've never wanted to be a writer. It was never anything that I thought I would do.
I think you're the first person ever on any of my shows to say that.
Yeah, I just never thought of it as like a viable career option. It's kind of like being a rock star. It's like a dream. So it's like, I'll dream about it, but I'd never actually become one. And I read a lot, and then when lockdown happened, I was like reading more and more, and I just thought, I'm going to see if I can if I can actually do this and write something. So I started just writing little short stories, and then I had this idea for a novel, which turned into Cries of Joy. Um, and so yeah, when I got the first draft of that down, I did that handwritten in like a notepad, the very first draft, and then I typed it up, and it was just such a great feeling of accomplishment. And then I started sending it out, but it all a learning curve. Like I had no idea about the publishing industry, agents, where to go, what to do, how to like self-edit and make sure it was a good quality manuscript. So after like loads of rejections and a bit of feedback, I realised where I was like going so embarrassingly wrong. And then I fixed loads of stuff up, sent it out again, and it got picked up by Red Dragon, which was a small publisher. Um, and then that was it.
Well, you mentioned about some lessons that you learned over those rejections. And I mean, rejection in itself, like the minute someone gets rejection, that really can be the make and break between somebody sticking with writing and somebody just being like, I clearly can't write, and letting go. So two questions really. The first is, how did you handle that first rejection? Sort of, how did you shift your mindset to keep going? And what were some of the big lessons that you can kind of think of that helped take you from being rejected to that first yes from Red Dragon?
So the first part of that question. So when I first was getting rejections, it was very much like you said, like, obviously I can't write. I'm sending out absolute crap to these people who know what they're talking about and have said that it's not good enough. And, so you have that sort of hit, like you're just dreaming. Now I get rejections every single day because I'm constantly querying agents and stuff. So you get like rejections all the time, and it becomes water for ducks back now. And then what was the second part of the question?
What were some of the lessons that you think took you from that kind of raw manuscript to something that got picked up?
Oh, so Stephen King's On Writing is a great book to keep going back to for self-editing help, stuff to put in your manuscript, stuff to take out. That was like a great self-help guide. And then just listening to what other writers had to say, especially about rejecting, like the amount of amazing writers that have had hundreds of rejections before they actually got a book published. And it feels very much like rejection is just part of the process. So you just have to roll with it and know that people will, you just have to find your audience. So people will like your writing. I think the best advice was make sure you put your all into what you do, and then people will like it. Don't send out a half-assed manuscript. Do your work. It takes time, so take the time and enjoy the process of getting a really good polished manuscript.
And you started your journey in 2020. It is now 2026 as of the time of recording this, and you now have 3 novels out, with a new one coming out on July 21st, Calem's Lake, which we will dive into. But talk us through a little bit about that kind of journey. What has it been like going from that first novel to where you're at now?
So when the first one came out, I'd already almost finished the second one. So then I was really eager, I wanted to get that second one out. So that one came out, I think it was 6 months after my first one came out. But then I felt like I had this real pressure to write more. So I found I was writing more, but not writing quality stuff. So it was that was a big learning curve, to just take a step back and remember that novels take time, and you've got to make sure you get it right. I think the Devil's Tree, I had that idea and I wrote it and I finished a 90,000 word manuscript, and as soon as I typed the end, I was like, that's shit. and so I took the laptop and threw it to the end of the bed, and I was like, that's shit. And so I just took a break for a few weeks, and then I just started it from scratch, and came up with what we've got now. I didn't even go back to that old manuscript. It's just on my computer somewhere, but I just know it's terrible.
How do you know?
Oh, just because there were so many bits when I'd reread it, and I'm like, oh, I'll sort it out in the next draft, sort it out in the next draft. But it was just, I was like, there's so many flaws throughout that whole thing, and I didn't like the characters. I was like, you've not put enough work into characters, and it was just naff. But then when I restarted it from scratch, like a clean slate, I think it's probably the best work I've done. I really, really do like that novel. And people still pick it up now with like minimal advertising, like it's still constantly getting picked up every single day, and reviewed well. So I think people do like it.
Yeah. So, what is it specifically? You mentioned there obviously it was you weren't happy with that book, but there was a gut kind of feeling that took you into that moment is when it was. So there was something inside you that just knew it wasn't your best work.
Yeah, it just felt forced and rushed.
Which is interesting because we do live in a time at the minute where everything seems to be going faster. It seems to be that a lot of authors almost get praised and hyped for writing faster and faster. I know that like I've been around authors that, and this is like very, just for people on the podcast, this is very, very extreme end of the spectrum. I am friends with an author who writes 14,000 words a day, 5 days a week, and writes multiple books a month. And then on the other side, I remember hearing an interview with Joe Hill, who I know is one of your influences, about how he wanted to step up to writing 2 books a year as his way of, really increasing his pace. So how do you kind of stay afloat on what is a good speed to be producing for you?
I mean, I think a novel a year is great. I mean, I'm currently writing quicker than that just because I know what ideas I want to do, and they've sort of come to me fully formed. Like some books come to you just an idea, and then you've got to work your way through it. But then some are like fully formed, and you just know everything that's going to happen. So, like, I've just written one which is currently out querying with agents, and that I wrote that in 50 days, which it's the quickest novel I've ever written. But I just knew everything that I wanted to be in it. There's some stuff like personal experience, so I was able to really sort of delve into that with knowledge without having to do all the research and all that sort of stuff that comes with writing. And that's a really good novel. Well, I think it is. And it's getting some traction with agents, which is nice. It's had a few pull requests, so fingers crossed it'll be picked up. But I think just take your time and allow yourself time to write, because you're right. It does seem like some authors can just knock out a book in a couple of months, like new book, and it's okay. You don't, no one's you're not competing with anybody, which is, I think, a good thing to remember.
And like you say, he's trying to put out that proud of his work. I liked that was a little sort of, nod that he said, was the fact that as long as you're doing, and that's always been my kind of attitude when it comes to approaching books, as long as I know that I've left everything on the page, there's really not a lot more you can do. That's
it. You've done it.
Being a writer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So just take your time, enjoy what you're doing, and just put your all into it.
And we mentioned, obviously, Joe Hill is an influence of yours, the likes of Dean Koontz I mentioned, and Stephen King as well. Obviously, I mean, Stephen King kind of just is horror, is in every conversation I have with a horror author. Yeah. But what is it specifically about those 3 writers that influences your books that kind of captivated you to this genre?
So the thing about King that sort of really gripped me as a reader, and then as I've developed into a writer, you sort of read his books differently. But what it always was for me was normal people. Like his small towns, his characters, they're all normal people that could be, your neighbour. And it just makes the horror just harder hitting when you think this is normal people with normal lives, normal jobs. So you can really put yourself in their position, and it makes the horror that scarier. So that's what I like about him. Joe Hill, on the other hand, he's got the normal regular people, but then he's a bit more fantastical with his work. Like you'd never really know what's going to come, like on Nosferatu and King Sorrow and stuff like that. You never know what's going to come in the next chapter. It could be anything, which is good. I don't think it's something I could write because I have to be quite grounded with my work because I have to feel like it's real as I'm writing. I struggle if it goes too fantastical. I start to think, oh, this is just it just sounds stupid, even though I love reading it. But my own stuff, yeah.
Yeah, I do love a bit of Joe Hill. I've just finished Rosemary's Baby, and that's very like, although it's kind of higher brow, I guess the character's obviously trying to like live more in the sort of middle to upper classes, like just it's rooted in stuff that is just so normalized that it's the horror just gets in.
Yeah. That is a good book, a good film.
If you could write or have written any of their 3 books or any of those 3 authors' books, is there a particular one that stands out for you?
Yes. 11
2263.
Yeah, I think that's my favourite novel of all time.
That's the one I've been not avoiding, but because it feels the least king, just at least on the outside anyway. That's the one that like it's piqued my interest. I've got it, but I've just not read it yet.
Oh, it's so good, and I read it once a year, and I would suggest the audiobook if you're into audiobook.
I am, yes.
It just has everything. It's such a great story. I can't even tell you. And it goes into like because the main character he goes to Derry in the 60s during like just after when Pennywise has been, so it's just so he sort of stumbles upon the aftermath of what happened in it, and that if I could write a novel like that, I'd be happy.
Brilliant. That's the goal.
Yeah.
And you have your new book, as we say, it's coming out on the 21st of July from Wicked House Publishing, Wicked House Press.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us a little bit about that book and the journey to writing Calem's Lake, and whether I'm saying Calem correctly.
I think it's actually pronounced Salem because it's Latin. It's Latin for heaven. So like sort of a little hint to what the lake is or could be. But that I was a little bit nervous about this novel coming out because my 3 previous novels are like full on horror, edgy seat tension, gore, that sort of thing. Whereas Salem Lake it's not a horror. It's a psychological thriller with a speculative, element to it. And it's about the writer who's just lost his wife and he's struggling to cope without her. So he goes to the lake to scatter her ashes because it's where they had like their fondest memories. What stops him from taking his own life is that he hears someone scream in the woods across the lake. So he goes to investigate. Police come, they say nothing's doing. And instead he decides to write his like life story, like what happened when he was a child, and it's very literary in that sense. And then you learn, and then as he sort of delves back into his history, and he's like the life of his parents and stuff, he figures out that the lake is more than just a lake, and that it's believed to be like an earthly doorway to what's on the other side.
And it is a great read. I've got it here. I read it in advance of this to have a little context for our conversation. And it's you mentioned about the fact that you like the grounded characters, and there's a lot of that rooted in there. It is a guy who is essentially trying to process his trauma while he doesn't have all the puzzle pieces. And one of the themes obviously running through is this idea of a therapist suggesting to sort of write the trauma in order to process it. And obviously feel free not to go there if this is too personal, but is that something that you've experienced yourself? Is there sort of a behind the scenes reason why you brought that into the book with you?
Well, yeah. So I started writing this book in hospital because three years ago my wife was diagnosed with cancer, and so with that comes the unknowing of what's going to happen. She's fine, thankfully. She's all clear, and she's perfectly well. But I found myself like we was in the hospital so much, and I would have hours and hours and hours of waiting whenever she was having surgery. And that's how that book came to be, just because, what happens after, and you get this, this feeling of, if this was to be over, you would hope, you know, you'd hope that there would be a chance to do it again or experience it again, afterwards in an afterlife or whatever is for this. And it just sort of stemmed from there. So the thing about the psychiatry, um, I mean, I've not done it, but when I've looked into it, writing is a great therapy in itself, and it can help you process and traumas and grief and stuff. So yeah, so I did a lot of research into that, and it's a great tool, and it is promoted by therapists for people going through trauma and grief.
Yeah, and the more I have this, the more we make our way through this conversation, the more I'm like connecting pieces of these dots, because it's a powerful technique to write trauma, and especially you said about the fact you wrote your first novel longhand, which is arguably the most powerful way to do it, because I've been in and out of therapy over the years. I've had my courses, and one of the things that a friend of mine always, she did her PhD or a degree in this, is by writing things by hand, you are connecting synapses of thought into your actual muscles. So things go into you process things more effectively than, say, if you were typing. But I also, in a funny way, it's probably the most King thing that you could have done to this book, because the book's about an author.
Yeah. I know.
So there's
so many of his books
that are
thing, or? Yeah.
Yeah. Most of King's books are, I am an author, here's a monster.
Yeah. Exactly.
So was that in any way present?
Yeah, a little bit, because it's very much about me and my wife, and it was so it was a writer, coping with with the loss of his wife, and so it was like, I'm a writer, and then that would be on the horizon. Thankfully, it wasn't. So it was easy to take that element of it and to be able to write it with so much feeling, and hopefully, get that across to readers, when they read it. That was the thought process behind that, as well as therapy for me as well, I suppose.
Oh, always. I mean, every book we write is therapy in some way, isn't it? Yeah. But with approach, because obviously, as far as I'm aware, you're going for small presses, you're going for representation. Are you at all interested in sort of self-publishing? Is that a path that you've looked at, or is it just not for you?
I think I would. I think what I struggle with is that, I mean, what is it? I'm just not confident enough. So I like the idea of that. I have to send it to someone, and it's got to be read by someone who goes, "Yeah, that's good. We'll take that on." And then you've sort of got that belief that it's actually an all right novel. So I just don't have that self-confidence to do it myself. I've done some like short stories and stuff. But yeah, I think I have to have someone tell me that it's good.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the reason that I ask is because when it comes to writing these books now, obviously pitching a book for representation, whether by an agent or by a publisher has a specific set of the things that they want, and there's certain angles that publishers are looking for in a book. Is that when you're writing a book, do you think of that first, or do you just go, I'm going to write this story and then I'm going to find the place it fits?
No, so I just write what I want to write. I read a quote from a writer, and it was, write the story that you want to read because you're going to read it 1,000 times. So I have that in my head. Like, I'm just going to write what I want to write, stories that I would want to read, and then I will pitch it out, and hopefully someone will take it on. And so far, every book I've written has been taken on. So yeah, long may that continue.
Has it been absolutely. Has it been a long process for you? So from the time of finishing that book, do you have kind of like an average for yourself on roughly how long you think it's taken you to go from that to the yes?
So when I've finished writing a book, how long do I give myself to get it sent out to people?
Yes.
Yeah, so with agents, I sort of give it 8 to 9 months, and then after that, I'll go to publishers. But at the moment, Wicked House have been so good to me since The Devil's Tree. If I don't get in with an agent, then they'll be getting the manuscript, because they're doing so much in the world of indie horror at the moment. They're getting some big names, and they're shifting a lot of books. So there's no many better places really to pitch to. If you can't get an agent that's going to get you in with Penguin or Potter, yeah,
Yeah. The big
yeah,
ones. I think it was actually last week, and it would be an episode that I think will have aired by the time we have this. But I was speaking to another author who's kind of similar to yourself in that they're writing and they don't really have that interest in self-publishing, and they're kind of going for the small presses and the other people to represent their book. And I kind of asked them a similar question in terms of how does the marketing look for you? Because obviously we met at a convention where you had a table, you had your books. I want to come onto the covers at some point because they're gorgeous, and we have a cover designer in common. But how much of the marketing still relies on the author in your experience? Because that used to be the argument was, if you're self-publishing, you do all the marketing yourself. If you're represented, you don't have to worry about it. But it feels like that's shifted. But I just want to know for sure if that's just me.
Yeah. So far, I mean, when The Devil's Tree was published, Wicked House was smaller than it is now. But with all of them, it's very much been the advertising and the marketing is down to yourself. Like, you need to get yourself out there. Like, I'm not very good on social media, and I hate doing all the, talking in front of the camera and stuff. So I need to up my game in that regard. But yeah, so far it is very much the marketing is all down to yourself. But what I feel you get out of having a publisher is the cover designer, there's the professional editing, proofreading, like the amount of edits and proofreading that they do to make sure your manuscript is in the best possible shape. I wouldn't be able to afford it, I don't think, by myself. And then also, like, the Wicked House has like over 10,000 followers on Facebook, so straight away it's pushing it out to thousands of eyes, to get on your book before you've even done anything. So that's why I would choose a publisher. Yeah, that's another thing as well that I didn't know, that you'd have to market your book yourself. I kind of, when I first got Cries of Joy accepted and I signed a contract, I was like, oh, is this it?
Yeah.
I'm sorted now. I've got a book published. I'll add my notice in.
Yeah. I think that's it again. Like, there's a lot of and obviously, like, there's a reason people don't know this, because it's a lot to learn kind of as you're going. But again, there's that wide spectrum of, again, all the way from self-pub, where you could literally, if you wanted to, and I have friends that have, put out a book for nothing, not touch, just put it out, and it's online, and people may stumble across it, all the way to, like you say, the Hodder and Stoughton's, the bigger Penguin presses and stuff, and then kind of that weird in the middle where it's like some people will do the book for you, some will also advertise, some will offer this, some will take your rights for X, and it's such a minefield to play in. Do you get any kind of do you consult with anyone with these agreements, or is it kind of at the minute you're looking at those, deciding the things that you want, and then like how easy is it to negotiate with a publisher?
Yeah, so Wicked House are very upfront, and you can ask them any questions. They're really easy guys to talk to if you've got any concerns. So far I've had no concerns at all. They're really supportive. They're really open about why they advertise in a certain way and their goals as a publisher. So they're focusing more on the digital sales because it's easier to get your digital sales in front of readers, especially with like Kindle Unlimited and the Kindle deals and stuff. So that's the sort of way that they're heading. But yeah, I don't consult with anybody. I mean, maybe I should. I don't know. Do you need a solicitor or something? But so at the moment, I just read through the contracts and it all sounds good to me. Yeah, as long as the royalty rate's good. I compare it, I go online and compare it with what other publishers pay, and I think Wicked House are pretty generous with their royalty share.
Yeah. And you, as I say, we met at an in-person event. We were saying about the fact that before we jumped on to record, you'd recently gone and you had a panel with the likes of Ramsey Campbell and other authors. You're doing a lot of this kind of getting yourself out there. You say a lot of all that's off your own back. How are you approaching getting yourself seen and into these events to speak with potential readers?
So it's really difficult to find places to go because a lot of the more notable literary festivals like Bloody Scotland and the Theakston Crime in Harrogate, which is I'm in Harrogate, so that's one of the biggest events in the country. They won't touch you. It's so hard to get in there without an agent or a representative, and they really have to pitch to get you in there. So finding events is hard, but the Liverpool, the Indie HorrorCon is a great way for writers, new and established, to meet readers. And I find HorrorCons, just in general, HorrorCons and Comic Cons, I've done those, and I've met so many readers who have picked up my books and then gone on to read all my other books and contact me for more signed copies. And so it's just anywhere really where you can meet people.
Well, as someone, so I've done tables and things for I used to be part of a group called Hawk and Cleaver. I used to do tables for them, but I'm looking at getting involved in tables and market stuff myself towards the end of the year. So someone who's a bit out of practice, got my own books and stuff to huck, what advice would you give for that first kind of convention that I set myself up for?
Good advice. I would. Well, my wife sets my table for me because I'm useless. I would
get a wife.
Get a wife. Yeah, they're really handy. So if it was me, I would literally just have my books in piles on the table, and then my wife comes in and she's like, right, okay, and then she just turns it into this whole display that's really eye-catching. And the amount of time at the HorrorCons where people come up like, oh, I have to come over just because your display is amazing. A real theatrical wow factor. For the Devil's Tree, she went out and foraged loads of little twigs, and she made a load of Blair Witch things to put all over the table, and she bought some autumn leaves to decorate all over it, and made it a real spectacle. And it really brought people in. So yeah, I would work on your table display. That's a good one. Yeah, and figure out what you're going to say when people come over and ask you, because sometimes you can get caught on the hop.
Yeah. Well, that was one of the things, and that's one of the reasons we're talking now, is because, as I say, I went around that conference, and I'm not going to, say anything specific about other people, but yours was one of my favorite displays, because there's something about the brand and the covers of your book that all are very consistent, even though they're kind of different. They've got this really grisly, moody, if people haven't checked out Axel's covers, I highly suggest that they do. And as I say, your covers were made by Christian. Christian, I think it's Benjamin is his full name. Insanely good cover designer. Did the cover of When Winter Comes, wherever that's down there. But how do you approach the brand? Because obviously, are your covers all decided by your publisher, or have you had an input in helping create this image?
So the Cries of Joy that I've got now is a new one, because before it was kind of a purpley colour, and it had this silhouette of this man that's looking really menacing at the top of a set of stairs. And then Dead Man's Heart was the actual image of the heart with the skull. That was just a stock image, and then we sent it to this woman called Emmy Ellis, and she turned it into this gothic cover, which I just love. And then Christian came up with the Devil's Tree. There was about 4 of us on that who came up with that eventually. But really, it was all down to Christian. It was, yeah. And the sort of brand has just sort of developed itself, because I didn't have that in mind. I was just after some cool covers. But like you say, when you put them all near each other, they've all got this sort of, dark, gloomy sort of theme to them that look like they're all sort of related. People always ask oh, are they, in a series? Because they look like they are. But yeah, no, they're not. Just good covers.
What was your favourite part of writing the new book? What is the part that you're most excited for people to read on July 21st?
I don't I don't know. I just like the whole story, like when you feel like you've been on a real journey, like you've lived through someone's life. So I think it's when they get to the end and there's the payoff on the last chapter, when you find, you sort of get some sort of answer as to the big question is what lies beyond the lake. So I hope that there's a big emotional payoff. I've had some early readers, message me like, emotional roller coaster, and they've been, sobbing and stuff at the end. So that's what I really like. So I just hope that everyone enjoys the journey. But as I said before, I'm nervous because I think a lot of our readers will be like, "Oh, I'm gonna go get Axel's new book because it'll be horrific and really scary and stuff like the others." But it is different. It is different than that.
I think it's a deeper kind of tension, isn't it? It's a bit more
Yeah, exactly.
deep rooted. Yeah. And I found as well, it was a story that, like, it felt big and comprehensive because you're not following, but obviously there's sort of several timeline things happening, and you're trying to wait for those puzzle pieces to come together. So speaking as a reader of this book, like I didn't see the ending coming. Like, okay. I thought that the payoff worked really, really well, and just the kind of mystery around Salem's Lake. Where did you come across that concept? Is that one that is that fictionalized, or is that something that you've come across before?
When I was, because I'd done an English and creative writing degree through the Open University, and the first couple of years from that we were learning about cultures and from around the world. And one thing that caught my eye was Lake Avernus in Italy, and it's got loads of caverns underneath it, and people believed that they were caverns to the afterlife, and sometimes they could hear their loved ones, shouting and calling them from underneath the water. And then, so when I did more research into this, people in all different cultures all around the world for millennia have believed that there have been earthly doorways to the afterlife. So there's like, in Turkey, there's a doorway at the top of the stairs. In Mexico, there's like a pit underground, and they believed that was like the doorway to hell. So they used to, kill people and put sacrifices in there, and it turns out they're just all over. They're everywhere, all over the world. And so I just sort of ran with that, really.
And you say you've got a few books in the works at the minute. What is imminently on the horizon for Axel? What's the next thing that you're getting yourself excited about?
So there's a contract signed for a book next year called Here Lies the Devil. And that is in close relation to The Devil's Tree, set in the same town. It's got some of the same characters in it. And it mentions the Devil's Tree as well. And that's back to horror. That's back to, full on monster horror. And I really like it. Again, there's like a cast of characters in there. So you get to see the story unfold from different positions. I don't want to give too much away, but it's kind of like a vampire novel. So it's very Salem's Lot.
Oh, okay.
But I didn't want my vampire to just be an all and out vampire, like every other novel. So I wanted it to be a bit different. So, that's coming out. I'm really excited for that. You don't have to read The Devil's Tree to read this one. But the idea is that if you have read The Devil's Tree, you'll want to read it. And if you've not read The Devil's Tree, you'll want to go back and read it. So it's one of them.
Very exciting. Well, so we are very much on the horizon of jumping into my quick fire round, where I've got 10 questions. I'll throw at you as quickly as possible, which don't know if I've prepped you for that, but that's going to be happening. But before I do, just for the listeners, I'm going to give you the floor. Tell us what they need to know about Calem's Lake. Tell them why they should get excited, and tell them why they should pick up a copy on the 21st of July.
Salem Lake is coming out on the 21st of July. It's about a writer called Dean Lackman, who's struggling to cope with the loss of his wife. After his therapist recommends that he writes down his life story in order to process his trauma. He discovers that the lake where he spent the most cherished memories with his wife is more than just a lake. It could possibly be a doorway to a second chance.
Love it. And I will back that up. It is emotional, it is raw, it is grounded, it is intriguing. So pick up your copy, and that will be going out. I think by the time this episode airs, it will be out in a few weeks. So make sure you check that out, and I'll put a link in the show notes. But now we'll jump into my quick fire round. So how this works is I have 10 questions I'll throw at you as quickly as I can. Try to answer as quickly as you can. It is just for fun. So I've had people literally do 5-minute answers to some of these questions before. Please don't do that. But, just to set the stage as to where we're at, Michael David Wilson. So are you ready for your first 10 questions?
Yeah, let's go for it.
Fantastic. What's the first thing you do when you wake up?
Go brush my teeth.
What's your favourite horror film of all time?
The Thing.
What's your favourite fruit?
Banana.
What was your dream job as a kid?
Rockstar.
What's your go-to snack?
My go-to snack? Oh, God. Yogurt.
The vampire apocalypse strikes. What's the first shop that you hit?
First shop. Supermarket.
What's your favourite country?
Spain.
What's your worst habit?
My worst habit?
You can make it writing related if you want to.
My worst habit is saying
Nice. What time are you most creative?
Evening.
What one book would you recommend above all others, excluding your own?
11/22/63.
Fantastic, covered. And one bonus question is, where can my listeners find out all about yourself and everything you've got going on?
So you can find me on Facebook, Axel Moulton Author, Instagram, TikTok, same handles. I'll put everything on there, every book signing that I'm doing, every event that I'm going to, and also competitions and signed copies of my books.
Perfect. And that is a wrap. So thank you so much, Axel, for joining us this week on the Writer's Chair podcast.
Thanks for having me.
No worries. And to everyone listening, thank you for being here. If today's conversation sparks something inside you, go and do something with it. That's the whole point. And if you want to go deeper, whether that's with your writing, your process, or actually finishing your book, head on over to danielwilcox.com/writers. There's a growing list of resources for you over there. And until next time, write bravely and dream big. Thanks again, Axel.
Cheers.